Welcome to the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I'm Bobbie Grenier, your trusted guide to navigating the world of real estate in Maine. Get ready to debunk mortgage myths, unravel real estate mysteries, and learn tips to avoid costly mistakes. Whether you're an industry pro, an overwhelmed buyer, confused seller, or simply curious about life in Maine, this is the podcast for you. Hey, welcome to the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I'm Bobbie Grenier, your guide to all things Maine real estate. Well, I'm so happy that you're here because today you get to sit in on a very candid chat that I had with the awesome and amazing Elisha Hardy. Elisha is a real estate agent and owner of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Northeast Real Estate, and she is going to give us the down low on selling property in Maine. But before we jump into the interview, let me fill you in on my friend Elisha Hardy. In 2005, Elisha made the courageous leap from the healthcare sector into real estate with the guidance of her dad and mentor, Bob Gilberti, embarking on a journey that would see her rise as a consistent top producer in her field. Her dedication and expertise have earned her many prestigious recognitions over the years, including the Chairman's Circle Gold Award in 2023. But wait, there's more. Alongside her thriving real estate career, she is also the proud owner of Horsegate Stables, a venture she shares with her husband, Todd. As a devoted mother of 4 adult children and grandmother to 10 grandchildren, and of course, her bestie, Bella the dog, family always remains at the heart of her life. Beyond her professional endeavors, Elisha is a true Maine girl with a love of the outdoors, and you'll often find her retreating to her off-grid camp up in northern Maine. With her wealth of experience, her innate ability to connect with people, and her no-nonsense attitude, I couldn't think of anyone better to give us the inside scoop on working with sellers and share invaluable insights and wisdom for sellers that just don't know where to start. Hey, Elisha, thank you for joining me and having a chat with me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, I'm not going to play it cool. You're my first interview for the podcast, so I'm really happy that it's you.
Well,
And
and this is the first time that I've ever been asked to do
woo,
it.
should be exciting then. So I mentioned in your bio that you weren't only a very successful real estate agent, but you're also, along with your husband, Todd, the owners of Horsegate Stables over in Dixmont. Can you tell me what working with horses and training horses, how you can sort of translate that into working with sellers and real estate in general?
3 things that I can think of are patience, practice, and trust. And empathy too, because we have to be empathetic to everything, to all parties involved, and patient and trusting, not only trusting our clients for informing us of everything that we need to be aware of, but also trusting our coworkers or the other people on the other side of the deal, and our title companies, our lenders, our attorneys, everybody.
Mm.
There has to be that huge trust in order to make everything go well, and for our buyer and seller to be happy with everything.
How do you find what's the best way to build rapport with your sellers? So when somebody wants to talk with you or meet with you, what do you think like the best way to come at it, for you and in your style of working with sellers?
I like to set up a meeting, a meet and greet type thing, and or if they're a seller from away, to do a Zoom call so they can at least see my face, and see who I am, just like I want to see who they are, and that's is just building a relationship, and that's really where it all starts from.
So I'm sure that there are some sellers that you just click with right away, and then others you have to work a little bit harder to, I don't know, to become friends. I know that when I do a closing, a lot of times it's really cool because I see that the agent and the seller, sometimes the buyer, they've really built a relationship and they know a lot about them and their personal life. And so you spend a lot of time together and you're really handling one of the most important things that they're going to do.
Yes. Very much so. Very much so.
So, kind of switching gears, I just want to talk. I hate to like bring up a bad time, but I want to talk a little bit about COVID and just I know, from the title company standpoint, it was so challenging. And I can only imagine, we didn't have to go into people's homes. So I can only imagine how challenging it was for you because, on top of being so challenging, it was so busy. It was so insane.
It was crazy. It was crazy. We had to be like, oh goodness, what are we going to do? But not let it, deter from doing our job. I mean, we did have a little bit of time that we weren't allowed to do anything, but we made it work and we tried to make people as comfortable as possible. And basically just explaining to them that we can come in and do a video, send the videos if that's what you prefer. We, provided at our homes gloves and masks, and hand sanitizer.
Right.
But just basically told our clients that, most likely they're going to be qualified buyers. You don't have to worry about, just the nosy neighbor coming to look through your home, that it's going to be a qualified buyer. And that was the other thing, is to make sure that everybody was qualified and ready to make a transaction happen. But a lot of it was we had to use technology. And it's funny that some of the older clientele, which you would not have thought, were able to do it. And it was actually really interesting because they got all excited because they could actually see us and not just
Right.
hear our voice. So,
Yeah, yeah, we definitely got creative and had to dig down deep. And looking back now, I think of like some of the things that were just kind of silly. Like I got those foolish plastic barriers for the closing
oh,
table.
yes,
I
yes.
panicked. I don't know. I just went and bought them, but it was definitely it was definitely a challenging time.
It was.
So, do
And,
you feel I know that the thing we've been talking about the last several years, pretty much since COVID, is inventory. Now,
mm,
your opinion, Alicia's opinion, do you feel like that's lightening up a little bit?
yes and no. People are still a little apprehensive, especially if they're going to stay within the area. Um, I have a large sphere of influence and a lot of referral based clients
Hmm.
that most of my people that are selling are actually moving out of state. So I don't have to really worry about finding them a new home. But I see the inventory slowly picking up. During COVID, I would carry, 5 or 6 listings. I've got almost 20 now. In the
Awesome.
heyday, I used to carry 50. So just, in 15 years, it's changed a lot.
Well, it's still definitely a seller's market, I would say.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so, what do you think that the seller's market, how that has changed sellers? Has it made them less flexible, a little more greedy? What would you say?
I see a mix. There is some greed. Um, there is some flexibility, but not a lot. People are like, okay, this is the price that you said my home is worth. I'm not going to budge from it.
Right.
And, you know, well, let me reverse myself. I try not to overprice homes, but sometimes, the seller's like, well, that home down the road is just like mine. And, they've got it listed for XYZ, even though you've repeatedly stated that it's not what it's listed for, it's what it's sold for that you have to be concerned with. Uh,
Absolutely. W-
so
Yeah. What do you do when you can't come to terms with a seller? What they think their home is worth, and it's not always greed. A lot of times, it's pride in homeownership, and they built it themselves, or they did something to the home that really they're invested personally. How do you handle that delicately, but still get them in the price range they need to be to sell their house?
I explained to them experiences that I've had. Um, and, with pricing at 5% below market value, and what happens when you price it more than 10, 20, 30% above market value. I am willing to say, okay, Mr. Seller, I if you want to try it at this price, I'm more than happy to do that. We will give it 30 days. And if nothing happens within 30 days, we will reduce the price to where my market analysis came in at.
There
And it's
is there is um some problems with pricing too high because once, the time on the market, dropping pricing, what are the effects of that to the seller?
it's not really the seller. They get on our case as an agent, even though we did suggest that they price it at a certain price. So it's a conversation that none of us like to have, that, okay, we are overpriced. And we probably should have started at the price that I suggested. But again, like you said, it's pride of ownership. It's they need that money to make the move. And they see everything else selling for 30, $40,000 more. So they feel that they can too. And then one other thing that it's a problem, but it's not a problem until it becomes a problem, is appraisals.
Mhm.
So, and that's the other thing that I use when they say, well, let's list it at this price. And I'll say, well, a buyer may like it at that price, it may offer that price, but what will happen, because the comps show that it should be at this price, when an appraisal comes in and then it's over and you don't get the value.
Right.
And there, a lot of times that is like, oh, we guess we didn't really think about that.
So all of the buyers that panicked and maybe either have some remorse because they looked for a home and looked for a home and looked for a home and they finally, got an offer accepted and they may have paid, even though it may have appraised or they paid cash. All of those buyers, are you seeing them kind of come back around as sellers now and being in a tough spot?
There are a few, yes. And it's disheartening because I'm like, I feel bad because I'm like, oh gosh, did I not do my job? Even though, they're like, oh no, we love the house. But now that they've been there, especially if they've come from another state and they've really never been to Maine, other than they thought, okay, we can work remotely. It'll be, the homes are cheaper here at the time than out west or, wherever. So they may be missing family, and it's hard. And again, I interview and sit down with everybody to make sure that it's nothing that I may have done wrong. It's just that, again, like you said, they panicked and this home was in their price range at the time. It met their needs. So they're like, let's go, because there's not a lot or anything else on the market.
Right, right. I did so many closings of people that I think had this idyllic vision, lots down in the Bar Harbor area and like Surrey, Hancock County, and then others that would go up to Greenville, go up in the woods. I closed a family that had come here one summer for vacation. And I'm
Oh,
assuming it wasn't during black fly season 'cause I'm not
yeah.
sure if they would have come back and bought a property then.
Right.
Because yeah, they came up, and it was from a southern state, so I'm not sure. I never checked back in to see how that first winter went, but I'm wondering if you're seeing that too, just all of these people that bought these not necessarily vacation homes, but some of them were second homes that they're, kind of saying, yeah, this isn't what I thought it would be. COVID's over, so we're out.
Exactly. And I think we're going to see, I think that are seeing that, like you said, in the coastal areas, in the more vacationy areas, that people from, like you said, New York or anywhere, that thought it would be a vacation,
Right.
and it really is not.
Well, I'm sure that goes both ways, people that, move to Florida or whatever, but, and not that Maine's not a beautiful, wonderful place to live, but, it's
It's not for
when you're
everyone.
making those choices under, stress and, everything's crazy and the market's a frenzy and you're just trying to get out of the city or wherever you're at. And everybody was, scared and nervous and making decisions maybe not as rationally as they would have.
or from just pictures. They may say, you may have offered a video or FaceTime or a Zoom. And they're like, no, I looked at the pictures, they're fine.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
yeah, and no inspections. So they're going into this home blindly, and they don't even do a final walkthrough. They close from afar. That's nerve-wracking as a real estate agent, because we've done everything that we can, and we've offered our advice on doing an inspection and doing this and doing that we know should be done. And they're like, no, no, we don't want to lose this deal. We want to go in. Here's our highest
Right.
and best, and let's go
And,
for it.
I mean, beyond giving your advice and, giving them all the pros and cons, there's not much more that you can do. So you had mentioned
Unfortunately.
walkthroughs. I know that's a little more of a buyer issue, but how do people not do them? It just amazes me when, I go into a closing and, you're having the walkthrough waiver sign and they just didn't didn't bother. And you've probably seen some crazy things from that.
Yes, I had one of my sellers, um, in, Central Maine. Everything was going grand through the whole transaction. Unfortunately, I had another closing, so I couldn't attend that one, and the buyer's agent called me appalled. The house was in disarray.
Oh no.
I mean, I had to hire a cleaner to go in and clean. And I'm like, she sent me pictures and I was mortified because I had been in that house less than 30 days prior, and the house didn't look like that. Not even close.
That's
I
crazy.
mean, it was unbelievable. So that's the case. Or if somebody was leaving stuff behind and left lots of stuff behind, we've run into that.
They think
Um,
it's helpful, and if you discuss it ahead of time, that's great, but
yeah,
otherwise, I've I've been at the closing table, they've said, "We left you a mattress," and, the buyer's like, yeah, great."
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Or the trash is in the garage because the trash company doesn't come until Monday. And this
Right,
is this is Thursday in, July. I've had
right,
I've had that happen. And even though as a seller's agent, you explain the home needs to be broom clean or better, preferred.
right.
Um, and it's in the contract. And a buyer can not sign.
So,
And I'm
would
sure you've seen that before.
I have. It's rare that they walk away. Usually, because of real estate agents, you're able to come up with some kind of resolution, and it might involve, I don't know, some some cleaning and scrubbing on your part, but it usually works out. But I'm sure it adds a lot of stress at the end of the transaction that you just don't need. And a lot of times, buyers and sellers will agree that the seller can leave stuff that they're going to pick up later, and most of the time, I think that probably works out. But is there any caution that you would give to a seller or even a buyer as to how that can go south quickly?
Yes, definitely get everything in writing, and have a timeline. I did have something come up, and the buyers contacted my sellers and said, "We're coming up this week, and we're taking the chicken coop and the rest of the stuff that's out behind the shed, and there's still, the ground is still saturated with moisture."
Oh yeah.
And I told my sellers, I said, we said it had to be removed by June 1st. And it had to be while you were there, because my clients weren't even going to be there when they said that they were coming. I'm like, you need to put your foot down, because it is in the contract that, you agree to it, but it's on your terms.
That really just solves so many problems. Discuss it and write it down, and
Get it
everybody
in writing and get
communicate
it
and get it up
signed.
front, and it just saves a lot of sometimes unpleasant feelings with that.
Mhm.
So that's definitely something to
Because it
keep in mind.
always comes back on us,
It does.
unfortunately. Even though we've done what we were supposed to, it's just, when, there's feelings involved. And when
Right.
there's feelings involved, that tends to, cause chaos.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, though, a lot of sellers I've seen, I'm sure you do too, again, back to that pride in homeownership, and they want their house to be, immaculate when the new owner takes pride, and when the buyers, comment and talk about how they love the flower gardens, and just some stuff that they did. That's really, we'll end that topic on a
Yes.
really nice
Yes,
note. But
it is. And it's great when my seller's like, I hired a cleaner after the movers left, so it'll be, move-in ready. And a lot of buyers want to clean on their own, which is totally fine
yeah,
because
absolutely.
we like things a certain way as
Right.
human beings.
Right. There's clean, and then there's our clean.
Correct. Correct.
So here's something, I don't know if it's a myth, but I wanted to ask you about because we live in Maine, obviously. Is winter a terrible time to sell your house?
No.
That's what no, just simple. No.
No.
That's
I
what
mean,
everybody thinks. So where do you think that comes from? Just
well, I think a lot of it stems from homeowners. They don't want people tracking snow and salt and everything through their home because it can be very messy.
mhm,
Um, who wants to move in the winter? But how I look at it is there's a buyer that has to move 12 months out of the year. It doesn't matter if it's summer, winter, fall, or spring. There's always people looking to buy a home. And if your home isn't listed and your neighbor's is because you didn't want to worry about shoveling your steps off,
right.
your seller's home is going to sell before yours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
excuse me,
more of
before
a
neighbors.
Yeah, it's more of a convenience thing. It's not necessarily that they'll get less money or that
Oh
the
gosh, no.
market's bad. I mean, it's a little slower in the winter. I mean, that just is the way it is. Um,
Typically.
typically, yes. And then, it goes again like after school starts when everybody's getting settled and all of that. So, okay, I should know the answer to that, but I just didn't. So,
Well, it's funny because everybody's like, "Well, I'm gonna wait till spring." I'm like, "Why?" Well, because that's when people are looking. People are looking all the time. And I mean, there's people looking today that may not may not buy until next December. But if the right home came on the market, because they're looking now, they're gonna jump.
absolutely, and especially in this market. Yeah. So, and the other thing too is everybody has that attitude. So there's so much more competition in the spring. I mean, you definitely
Correct.
could probably move your house faster in the winter if it worked out for you.
And then if you're worried about the yard not looking nice and things like that, I've always said to the sellers, if you have some, beautiful sunny summer pictures, I'm more than happy to utilize those.
Oh,
As
right.
long as
Yeah,
you took them, I am more than happy to utilize those in the listing so people can see what it looks like underneath that white stuff.
definitely. So, if we have a seller that's listening to the podcast and they're overwhelmed and they don't even know where to start, and even before they call a real estate, I mean, probably calling an agent is the first thing to do. But if they're just kind of trying to wrap their mind about what do I do if I'm moving towards selling, maybe in 6 months, what's your advice?
My advice is to start putting away in totes things that you don't utilize on a regular basis because as a real estate agent we're going to ask you to quote unquote stage your home and declutter. And if you have stuff that you haven't used in your closet or items that are in your cabinet and your cabinets are overflowing, pack those away because you're going to have to pack them anyways if you're going to move. So pack them now, they're put away, and there'll be less things to do that way. Um, I offer to my sellers and suggest to my sellers to do a pre-listing home inspection.
Ooh, that's a great idea.
It has saved a lot of, I think, a lot of transactions because you don't know what you don't know. You may have bought in the home during COVID and didn't do a home inspection, and there may be something underlying that you aren't really even aware of. You could have radon a high radon test that you
Mm.
aren't aware of. But if you have a pre-listing home inspection, which I offer to my sellers and suggest highly that they do that pre-listing, then you most likely will find out if there's anything that could prevent the sale from happening, or from a buyer backing out or being scared about something, um, or a septic system. You know, you haven't pumped
Right.
it in 7 years,
Right. So do
because
you do
that's
you
typically.
offer that? Like, when you're listing, do you offer that information that was on the inspection, or does it depend on what the information is? What Once you've had that inspection, what obligation does the seller have to disclose that to the buyer?
I recommend that we disclose the entire report, and that if there's anything on there that they have addressed, that we supply the buyer a receipt or invoice that it was addressed, or if they want to offer an allowance. I've had elderly people that are like, I don't know anybody. I I can't physically do it. Can we just offer an allowance?
Right.
Or old flooring or anything like that. You don't know what a new buyer is going to want. So if somebody says, well, my dog tore up the carpet and it looks horrible, well, don't replace it, because 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be what a buyer really wants.
Oh, that's
So
a good point.
you offer an allowance for that. And Home Depot and Lowe's will come in and measure your rooms, and you can go in and pick out a medium grade carpet and figure out what the cost is and get a quote and include that in your listing.
I have to believe that builds trust too. Like when the seller is just super upfront and saying, "Hey, I know that this carpet needs to be replaced. Do you want carpet? Do you want hardwood?" Like you said, make an allowance. So that's a great idea.
Yeah. And same with, roofing or anything like that, that if it's at the end of its useful life. I recently had a home that the septic system was at the end of its useful life. And they don't live in the state. So we were able to get a septic design completed. We had a we didn't do a home inspection on this one. But we did do a septic inspection because I sensed something might be wrong with the septic system. And so I had a septic inspection done. We had a septic design done, and we also have a quote for a new septic system. So that's all included in the
Perfect.
property disclosures for a potential buyer.
So your real estate agent spidey sense kicked in.
It sure did.
Yeah.
Sense is what it was.
So going back, you had mentioned staging.
Mhm.
And I know that we all watch the home improvement shows and the staging shows, and I think that sometimes maybe will overwhelm sellers to think that they have to completely buy new furniture and paint and do completely redo everything and have this model home that they have to continue to live in with their kids and their dogs and their husbands and all of that. So, what's some realistic advice you can give geared towards staging?
Um, for like we'll start with the kitchen. I suggest trying to remove as many of our gadgets that we have on the
Mm,
countertops and put them away in a closet or somewhere where if you need them, you could pull them out. But to me, a kitchen, just clean countertops, um, and just very minimal items out and about.
yeah, take down the family photos, all of that sort of
Exactly.
thing.
In a kid's room, pack a lot of people say, okay, Johnny, you've got 6 items that you can keep, and the rest we're going to pack away. So when we get to our new home, it's going to be a big surprise at what's in that box.
Ooh, that's
So
fun. I like that.
they keep 6 toys out, and the rest get packed away, and they help pack them. So, and they can write on the box, Johnny's toys. But limit that so that when you're trying to get picked up for a showing, that there aren't 2 toy boxes full of stuff strewn everywhere. You
And
have.
and the fact is you do have to live a little bit differently when your house is
Yes.
listed and when there are going to be people coming for a showing. And it can equal money, right? I mean, that can really change what an offer may be.
Yes, correct. And, the biggest thing, you don't have to have it professionally staged, but the biggest thing is depersonalize, declutter, and try and keep the home vacuumed, mopped, swept, as much as you can, because there may be an agent that drives by your home, sees your sign, and says, I've got a buyer. They love this neighborhood. They really want to get in right now.
Excellent. So I am sure with social media, I know that I have a lot of realtor friends on my social media, and the minute they'll say 3 bedroom home coming for sale in Hamden, everybody's jumping in. Where is it? I have buyers. I need more information. So
Correct.
that and just going a little bit more, not necessarily on the staging, but the condition of the house. You've seen them, and I've seen them. Pictures, I mean, how pushy are you with your clients to say, "Hey, let's get these dirty dishes out of the sink?"
Well, I have a wonderful photographer who's also part of my team
Perfect.
that she has a list of what to do before my scheduled appointment. Some people do it, some people don't. But it's just that is one thing because I am hiring a professional photographer and their time is valuable just like mine, that if they want good professional pictures online, that they need to help too. Even if it is that, okay, Hadley's going into, that's my photographer, going into this bedroom and there's a few things that, they don't want in the photo. So just move them out to the hallway. And then
Right.
when she's done with that room, you push them back. So
Absolutely.
there's ways to do that. But like you said, a dishwasher, put everything in the dishwasher. Just leave the toilet seat down, clean the litter box. I know that the interior of a litter box is not going to be seen in a photo, but hide the litter box,
Right, right.
hide
You
the
can
dog kennel.
imagine what that smells like. And that's
Yes.
another thing too, and I have a story for years and years ago. I had a house for sale and, always had it cleaned. I was so proud of myself, and we had a dog that had really bad breath, and we were so used to it. But
Mm.
the agent called one day and she goes, "We need to talk about the dog." And I'm thinking, "Oh, well, the dog was home, but she's so friendly. She's so sweet." And she's like, "She smells really bad." I'm like, "Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna take the dog out when they're showing." So, I mean,
Mhm.
she was funny about it and really good
Yeah.
about it, but we just didn't think about it. And the house was clean and everything looked nice, but boy, that dog.
Yes, and if we're going to talk about smells, um, smoking,
Right.
and a lot of people, are aware that not everyone likes the odor and will smoke outside. But I'll my first listing that I had back in 2005, it was a referral, and I was all excited. And I get there, and it was like a Cheech and Chong movie. I opened the door, and it wasn't that kind of smoke, but it was like cigarette smoke. And I'm
Scooby
going,
Doo
oh,
van. Yeah.
yes. And I'm like going, oh my goodness. And, we were chatting and, they were sitting right there at the table while we were talking, just, smoking, chain smoking. And I laughed and I'm like, how am I going to tell them? What am I going to do? And she called me the next day and she's like, I just wanted to let you know that I've got some paint for the outside of the house, or I'm going to go look for some paint for the outside of the house to paint the trim of the new windows. And it just dawned on me. I'm like, you know what? I said, why don't you buy some ceiling paint and some wall paint and refresh the inside of your home? I said, I'm not, you know, telling you what to do and what not to do, but there's some buyers that don't really like the smell of cigarette smoke. And maybe you could smoke outside or in your mudroom or something, and maybe paint the inside to give it a nice fresh smell. And the phone went dead. And I started crying.
Oh no.
And she's like, dear, don't cry. It's okay. I understand not everybody smokes. And they ended up doing what I recommended, but I felt like I felt horrible. And all I wanted to do was cry every time I talked to her because I'm like, she hates me because, I
Right. Well, you're not there
all
to
the way
judge. You're there to sell her house, and if you have to maybe
exactly.
tell a uncomfortable truth to do that, then that's what you have
Right.
to do.
And that was before showing time. So, we had to verbally give the feedback. And all the feedback had been before she painted was the house smells like cigarette smoke. The house smells
Mm.
like cigarette smoke. But I talked to her not too long ago, and she said when they bought their new home that they don't smoke in the house. They actually ended up quitting.
That's awesome. See? See? You
But I
really
did.
helped
I
somebody
literally
there.
cried. I was just like, how am I going to tell them? What am I going to say? But that was like, it was my very first listing, and I'll never
That's
forget that
crazy.
because my
Well,
father
I
told
mean,
me
you
to
have to
grow up.
learn something from every listing that you do, every seller that you deal with. So, and
Yeah.
you must
So
find that sellers come back, right? I mean, that's probably one of your biggest sources of business is seeing those sellers come back.
85 to 90% of my business over the past 5 years have been past clients and referrals from past clients.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know you and I have known each other for a long time and worked together on a lot of deals. And I'm not just saying this because you agreed to be on my podcast and talk to me, but I I admire that you're so with it, but you always do it with a smile. I mean, you take no bullshit, but you're always so professional and so friendly. And that's just the perfect combination in my mind, especially in this business.
Thank you very much, Bobbie. It's always a pleasure to work with you guys at the office, and I was honored to think that you wanted me to be on your podcast and to be the first one. That I
Aw.
want to pat myself on the back a little bit and blush a little bit too because that makes me feel really good inside.
So, do you have any parting words? I know you've got a lot to do, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but anything else you want to put out there that sellers or maybe new agents that are starting to work more with sellers, just some words of wisdom?
Be yourself, be truthful because that is really what a seller wants, whether they want to hear what you have to say or not. They want the truth and they want honesty. Don't give them the information like pricing, for instance. Don't tell them a price just because you want to get the listing. Um, because they're gonna like you more in the end if you're upfront and honest. And I'd rather have that and have them be upset with me at the very beginning than upset with me throughout the whole process.
Right.
And
And
maybe
that's
not
part of building that trust. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I can get this done
right,
for you and that's why you hired me. Let me work, let me earn my money, let me do my job. So that's
exactly,
actually really great advice.
exactly. And just be yourself and love what you do, and it it'll it'll show twofold.
You have to love what you do because it is not an easy gig.
It is
And
not,
it is not. And
especially
being
after,
authentic,
yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's life advice really
it
for
is.
anything that we struggle in. I don't care if you're 16 or 56, it's just something that and it always works out better when you're true to yourself. Well, I want to say thank you to Elisha Hardy for coming on the podcast today and giving us so much amazing information and insight, not only about working with sellers, but information for sellers themselves. If you'd like to connect with Elisha, you can reach her on LinkedIn or Facebook at Elisha Hardy Realtor. Her website is mainhomesearcher.com, or you can reach her at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Northeast Real Estate in Bangor, Maine. This has been the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast with Bobbie Grenier. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and will share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to leave a review and follow the podcast so you don't miss new episodes. The content of this podcast is for informational purposes and not intended as legal advice or representation by myself or any of the guests on the podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep it real.